talk to us about this situation facing Humza Yousaf up in Scotland. Surely he is hanging, but by a thread. Is he going to hold on?
Not a chance. And the reason why he won't be able to hang on is there's one vote in the balance, one person who could save him, and that is Ash Regan, who he defeated in the leadership election, who's an MSP who defected from the SNP to Alex Salmond's party, Alba. And when she defected, Humza didn't say it was a sad day. Well, we normally say it's sad to lose colleagues. I think he will have felt it was sad to lose Lee Anderson. I think it's sad when we lose people from our parties. He crowed and he said that she wouldn't be missed. And having given her a kick through the door when she left, she is likely to return the favor to him because she sent him a letter asking him for assurances before she pledges her vote. And she's done. She's made him an offer he's going to have to refuse.
Well, look, I mean, I think it probably speaks to the fact that Humza Yousaf isn't a very good politician. The fact that he sort of thought he was a moment of optimum political power to end the coalition with the Greens. People have told me that it was going to end anyway. And then to do that sort of spiteful sort of, you know, goodbye, don't get your backside trapped in the door on your way out to his former leadership contenders, it may come back and bite him. So if he doesn't survive, what is the likely outcome going to be? Do you think the SNP will manage to scratch together another coalition of sorts that has the confidence of the Scottish Parliament, or are we heading towards national elections in Scotland?
That's the real question. I think Humza is not just on life support. Humza is about to have his life support unplugged. The question is, the vote that's going to be next week tabled by the Scottish Conservatives is a vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf himself. Technically, he doesn't need to do anything as a result of that, but I think politically he will have to resign. The SNP will try to find another candidate for First Minister. That will cause them problems. There are deep splits in them between their left and their right, people who believe in a more fiscally conservative approach to Scotland and people who believe you can just splash the cash everywhere. The problem is, if you don't have a majority, you can't appoint a First Minister if the other parties simply oppose what you're proposing. And that is where this thing hangs in the balance again, which is that there are 65 people in total opposed to the SNP when you count in Ash Regan and the two Greens, who Humza has pushed out. There are 63 SNP MSPs who can vote. In that situation, if all the opposition parties decide they want to push hard for 28 days, all they need to do is vote down whoever the SNP put up. They don't need to get involved in proposing a First Minister, because in Scotland, unlike in England, if you cannot you cannot appoint a First Minister, the general election automatically happens after 28 days. And I would have thought that Alex Salmond's party see advantage in a vote because it hurts the SNP at the very least and maybe brings them in some candidates. Labour definitely, because they're riding high in the polls. The Liberal Democrats definitely because they see advantages here. The Greens simply for revenge, and the Scottish Conservatives because acting against the SNP is showing to be one of the few areas at the moment where the government, the governing party, I should say, the governing party, the Conservatives, can act in a way which actually is aligned with a lot of where voters are in Scotland. I think most Scottish voters are looking at this show and they're saying, what a shower. It's time for a change. And I think that sense, the sense that across the country, maybe it's time for a general election, I think that will come out in Scotland in the politics. So Humza is a goner. There's a really high chance of an election. The only way through is for Humza to bring back his two Greens, not going to happen. To bring in Ash Regan, not going to happen. Or to do a deal with the Scottish Conservatives, and that doesn't feel like it's in the interests of Scotland.
I think we'd be on a skiing holiday in hell before together. Maybe I don't know whether you're a skier, but maybe we could go to Harvie more. Maybe a skiing holiday in hell before the Conservatives went into coalition with the SNP, which probably means it's about to happen because my powers of prediction are about as bad as anyone else's. Look, moving away from Scotland to a more sort of nationally focused issue. Interesting news from the Labour Party yesterday about their plans to renationalise rail franchises as and when they come up for renewal. All polling shows this is quite popular with the general public. Do you think this will lead to improvements in services, and will we see an improvement on our railway lines because of it?
Obviously, as a loyal Labour Party supporter and strategist, I would like to believe it would lead to improvements. I think the danger in the railways is to think that any simple solution will create a simple result. The issue with a lot of service disruption is the ongoing industrial action. So Labour, what it's doing is not just nationalising the railways, it's nationalising industrial conflict. And I think unless the Labour Party can see a way in which they can stop the industrial action where ASLEF drivers are refusing to work overtime and therefore creating vacancies for drivers, they'll be stuck with the same situation. You have to deal with the industrial issue. I don't think rail staff are particularly underpaid. Drivers almost certainly aren't. And I think, Labour are bringing to themselves an industrial dispute which the Tory government have been unable to resolve. And I'm not saying the Tories are better or worse at this. It's a really sticky issue because to win a strike on the railways, you have to be willing to close the railways down. So I think this is a much more nuanced piece. And I personally have been a long-term supporter of railway privatisation. I don't think there is an easy solution by nationalising again.
OK, well, Keir Starmer said that their plan will end the boom and bust in the rail industry. Made that announcement at a rail factory, I think it was the Hitachi factory in the north of England. How?
Oh, look, I think the argument is stability, because we have had one thing which I think everybody has to accept is the railways have been effectively run by Department for Transport since the pandemic. They couldn't have been run without support for DfT, and the opportunity that's there is, when I talk to railway chief executives, they say there is more interference by civil servants and ministers in the railways than there even was in the days of British Rail. So if we're going to have the franchises brought in, I would like to see the franchises run by city region mayors. I'd like to see Steve Rotherham running a franchise. I'd like to see Andy Burnham, Andy Street as it is now. I'd like Ben Hoochin perhaps. Look, I'd like to see the city region mayors running the transport franchise. I don't want to see the DfT bureaucrats running it. If you can take out some of that interference and have it more responsive to local labour markets, local democracy, then we could see a way to a different way, because Steve Rotherham, to give him his due, has sorted out Merseyrail in a very imaginative way, got peace with the unions and got a decent service running. Yeah. So I can see that if you move from, we had privatisation, we had the pandemic, we got big subsidies. Let's move to a better, more passenger-oriented one. There's some consensus in the industry about where to go. The Williams Review
well, exactly. I mean, I was about to pick up on the fact that that was suggested by the Williams Review, part of the government's strategic rail review. Yeah. The Labour Party has slightly moved away from that, though, because the reason they say they want to renationalise these franchises is to stop the fragmentation of the service, which they say is hugely inefficient and leads to this boom and bust. Of course, implementation of the Williams Review would be the ultimate fragmentation of it and does pose, without going too deeply into it, some challenges, for example, how you do smart ticketing.
Oh, look, I think the tension in the Williams Review, and without getting too nerdy about it, is, you do need a guiding mind, but who is the guiding mind going to be? And the challenge is, this has all got to be located in the context of decarbonising our transport, of which railway will play a key role, but buses will play a bigger role, and electric vehicles will play an even bigger role. So as part of the broader ambitions of Labour for 2030 to decarbonise energy generation and to hit our net zero targets. So these things are complex because they're interlinked, and I think that's why I believe there's no simple solution, but done the right way, we could get faster in the right direction. OK, well, John, you are right. There is no simple solution. Look, finally, we've been discussing on the show today that the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland complaining that the passage of the Rwanda Bill through Parliament has
has seen the number of migrants going from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland, or even from Wales directly to the Republic of Ireland, go up by 50%. He blames fear of the Rwanda Bill. Is that evidence that it's working or evidence that it's going to fail?
So one, the Rwanda Bill isn't going to work because getting 150 people to Rwanda is not going to be deterrent. We've seen the tragedy this week of 5 people drowning as they try to cross. If you're not deterred by death, you're not going to be deterred by the remote chance of being sent to Rwanda. I think the issue that the Irish government are signalling is the government in the UK has no solution for the fact that since March last year, people cannot apply for asylum in the UK. That means there are tens of thousands, 75,000 now, and growing, people who have arrived in the UK. They're in the UK. They cannot apply. They cannot be told whether they've got a legal a right to stay because that's been taken away from them. They're in a limbo. And if you can travel internally in the UK, as you can, and travel internally in the common travel area between here and Ireland, why wouldn't you go to Ireland? And it's the issue that your panel were discussing, which is this is a global challenge. We do not have much pressure on this. The most pressurized countries with refugees and asylum seekers are in the global south. We have to play our part in burden sharing, and we have to play our part, the right part for Britain, which is, Britain's not a cruel country, it's a generous country. And the idea that the emblem of our migration policy, our asylum seeker policy, should be one that is designed to be so cruel you wouldn't want to come here, that's shameful for Britain. It's shameful for our nation, and it should really be shameful for the government. We're a bigger country than that.